Now, Reuters has reported that a Bangladeshi court on Thursday charged the owners of a garment factory and 11 staff with homicide in connection to the deaths of 112 workers in the country's worst industrial blaze nearly 3 years ago. If you remember, that factory caught on fire, and as I said, it killed 112 Bangladeshi workers. Well, that's really important now. The court has indicted Delwar Hossain and his wife, Mahmuda Akter, who are the owners of the Tazreen Fashions. Also indicted were 11 employees, including factory managers and security guards, in connection with the November 24th, 2012 fire on the outskirts of Dhaka. Now, the trial for them will start the 1st of October, and the public prosecutor, Kandakar Abul Manan, told reporters that if convicted, these people could face life in prison. Life in prison. Wow, that's amazing. Now, investigators had said that many of those who died in this blaze died because supervisors ordered workers, and get this, they ordered workers back to their stations even as the alarm was ringing and smoke was rising through the internal staircase. Hey, the building's on fire. We think the building might be on fire. Get your ass back to work. Seriously? What in the actual fuck? If you even suspect fire, you should evacuate the building. But no, we can't do that because that's going to harm productivity. Get your ass back to work. I don't care if you burn. And that's what happened. That's awful. Now, some stats here is Bangladesh is the world's second largest apparel exporter after China. So there's a good chance that if you look on one of your shirts, it came from Bangladesh, or it came from somewhere in the region, came from India, or one of these countries that has little to no labor protections. Especially if you shop at places like Walmart, and I know some people have to out of necessity. You look on the tags of those shirts, most likely it's going to say, if it's cheap, made in Bangladesh. Odds are, it might even have been made by the same factory that had burnt down. So, I mean, we sort of have a role in this. We have a hand in this. And I'll get to that. Now, as I said, they actually raised wages after this happened and allowed workers to form trade unions after a string of factory accidents thrust poor paying conditions into the international spotlight. So it is good to see something positive come out of this, and I kind of want to liken that to what happened in America in the early 1900s. Now, but first I want to point out a couple of things. Well, this is what happens when our trade deals, for example, free trade, allows companies and corporations to outsource jobs like these. When you outsource labor into countries with no regulations and you set up these big factories with no oversight, no regulation, you're going to have things like this. You're going to have people that are dying for cheap labor. And of course, as you can see, it also cheapens these people's lives. If you can remember the suicide nets in China. I mean, that's amazing how cheap we've made people's lives in order to get cheap shit. That, of course, breaks down or unravels in the instance of clothes. Cheap labor, cheap shit, and then they cheapen these workers' lives. It's really, really a terrible thing. And as I said, this is what happens when you allow these corporations to outsource to these countries with no regulations in order to save an extra buck. It makes us liable. It makes us part of the problem. Now, as I said, this comes from a lack of regulation and a lack of labor unions and workers' rights. And it is good to see that Bangladesh actually said, okay, now you can unionize, now you can get a pay raise, now you can collectively bargain for safer working conditions and better pay. Now, on the point that I wanted to point out, the parallels to us here in America, is that we've already been through this. In fact, one of the defining moments in the labor union movement was the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. that was, I believe, in the late 19th century. It was a key moment. 146 people died in this fire. And they died, a lot of them died because they either had smoke inhalation or they jumped off the building to try to escape the fire. Why didn't they just use the fire escape, you ask? Well, it's because the bosses regularly locked the fire escapes. They locked it. They blocked them. Why? To prevent people from taking unauthorized breaks. Oh, you're not going to take a break on my watch. We'll lock the door. But when you lock the fire escape, when there's an actual fire, people can't get the fuck out. That's a bit of a problem. And as I said, this prevented people from being able to use those fire escapes, so they ended up jumping to their death. And this is one of many examples that we've had in American history that shows how we need labor standards, how we needed labor unions. And to this day, I think we still do. And a lot of people are like, no. They've outlived their usefulness. There was one time where it was useful. But now they're bad for America. No, they're good for America. Ever since Reagan broke the unions, we've seen a stagnation of wages. While productivity goes through the roof, yes, a lot of that has to do with automation, but nonetheless, people are working harder. We are more productive, and yet our wages do not reflect that productivity. It's not a stretch to say that if we got rid of unions, like a lot of Republicans say that they would, that they want to, public and private sector, that it wouldn't take long for us to get back to this. We really have to remember our roots, remember where labor has been, to prevent it from going back. That's why as I said, that's why we need strong unions. Because preventing this kind of stuff, well, that's what unions and regulations are for.